Lagos, Adaora Adesoy lived wrapped in wealth, untouchable at 25. Okechukwu, her 35-year-old driver, lived in silence and duty. But one night, a kiss meant to protect her from danger would cross every boundary and awaken a love neither of them expected. Hello, bestie. Please stay with me as I unfold this interesting romantic story. If you enjoy the story, please support us by subscribing to this channel and hit the notification button for more. Thank you. Grab your popcorn, sit back, relax, and enjoy this story. The Adesoy mansion stood like a palace at the heart of Banana Island. Its ivory-painted walls caught the glow of the evening sun, gleaming as if the house itself was dipped in liquid gold. The driveway curved wide, paved with interlocking stones that shimmered faintly under the glow of embedded floor lights. Palm trees lined the path, their fronds swaying gently in the Atlantic breeze, while a black Bentley sat waiting at the front like a sentinel of wealth and power. Inside, the home was no less breathtaking. Polished white marble stretched across the floors, reflecting the delicate glow of recessed ceiling lights. The living room was a harmony of modern elegance and African pride. Cream leather sectional sofas decorated with ochre-patterned throw pillows, bronze sculptures of Yoruba dancers placed in carved alcoves, and a massive glass coffee table framed with gold edges. On the far wall, an abstract painting in bold strokes of red and black caught the eye, a statement of both wealth and taste. Okechukwu stood quietly near the staircase, dressed in his crisp white shirt and black trousers. He looked the part of a professional driver, yet his posture carried more discipline than most men in his position. Years of service, first in the military, then behind the wheel, had sculpted him into a man who commanded respect without raising his voice. His eyes, however, often betrayed him. They lingered too long on the small details of the mansion, as if constantly reminding himself that this world was not his. He adjusted the cuffs of his shirt, glancing at his wristwatch. The Bentley's keys weighed lightly in his palm, but he felt the heavier weight of responsibility. For men like him, mistakes had no excuse, especially when serving a family like the Adesoys. Then she appeared. Adaora descended the sweeping staircase with a grace that made the very air pause. At 25, she carried herself like royalty wrapped in silk. Her gown, a flowing emerald green dress, clung to her figure before spilling like water around her ankles. A diamond pendant rested at the base of her neck, catching the chandelier's light with every step. Her braided hair was gathered into an elegant bun, exposing her smooth brown skin that glowed with youthful radiance. Okechukwu swallowed hard, forcing his gaze downward in respect. But it was impossible not to notice the quiet power in her presence. Adaora wasn't simply beautiful. She was untouchable, born into a life where wealth cushioned every fall. She reached the bottom step and caught his eyes, just for a moment. Her lips curved in the faintest smile, polite yet knowing. "Are we ready?" she asked, her voice calm, threaded with the authority of someone used to being obeyed. "Yes, madam," Okechukwu replied, bowing slightly. He walked ahead, opening the tall mahogany double doors for her. Outside, the evening air was cool, and the Bentley gleamed under the driveway lights. He stepped forward and held the rear door open, his movements precise, practiced. Adaora slid into the car, her dress flowing elegantly over the leather seat. As Okechukwu closed the door and walked around to the driver's side, he allowed himself one brief glance at her through the tinted glass. Her eyes were already turned away, gazing out at the water that glistened beyond the gated walls of Banana Island. To her, this was just another evening. But to him, every detail mattered, every glance, every word, every moment. He started the engine, the Bentley purring like a satisfied beast. And as the gates of the mansion rolled open, Okechukwu knew one thing for certain. This night would change everything. The Bentley's engine purred softly, its polished body reflecting the driveway lights as Okechukwu steered it out of the Adesoy gates. The mansion's iron gates rolled shut behind them, cutting off the warm glow of wealth and drawing them into the pulse of Lagos nightlife. The city stretched wide before them. Lekki Tollgate glimmered with neon lights, and the road ahead buzzed with cars flashing headlights like restless stars. Billboards towered above the expressway, adverts for luxury brands, Afrobeats concerts, and new estates promising island living. On the far side, the Atlantic shimmered, its dark waves catching the city's glow. Inside the car, the world was hushed. The Bentley's interior gleamed with black leather seats stitched in gold thread, the scent of fine polish mingling with Adeora's perfume, something floral and faintly intoxicating. Adeora leaned against the tinted glass, her emerald dress flowing like silk around her legs. Her diamond pendant rose and fell with each calm breath, sparkling when it caught the streetlights. Though her face was turned outward, her reflection in the window showed the elegance of someone used to being admired. From the driver's seat, Okechukwa's eyes flicked between the road and the mirror. He saw her there, framed by shadows and light, as unreachable as the stars above. His hands gripped the wheel firmly, his posture straight, but inside he wrestled with thoughts he had no right to entertain. He cleared his throat. "Will you be staying long at the party, madam?" Adeora turned slightly, her voice smooth, practiced. "Not too long. It's a friend's birthday, just a few hours." Her tone carried neither arrogance nor warmth, the kind of middle ground wealthy heirs often chose when speaking to staff. But Okechukwu nodded, keeping his reply short. "Very well, madam." Silence returned, filled only by the hum of the car and the faint sound of Afrobeats playing low on the stereo. Burna Boy's voice drifting in like a quiet heartbeat. As they approached Victoria Island, the skyline shifted. Glass towers rose higher, their windows lit like jewels against the night. Clubs and lounges spilled laughter into the streets, and rooftop bars glowed with golden lights like constellations come to earth. The roads narrowed with traffic, and Okechukwu maneuvered smoothly, his patience unshaken. At a red light, Adeora finally turned her gaze from the window. Her eyes met his in the mirror for the briefest moment. "You've been with our family how long now, Okechukwu?" He hesitated. It wasn't often she spoke to him this directly. 7 years, madam." 7 years, she repeated, as though the number carried weight. Her lips curved in a faint smile before she looked away again. The light turned green. Okechukwu pressed the accelerator, but his heart thudded heavier than the car's purr. That fleeting moment, her voice softening, her eyes on his lingered long after they passed into the glittering streets of Victoria Island. Victoria Island throbbed with life by the time the Bentley rolled to a smooth stop in front of the rooftop lounge. The building stood tall against the Lagos skyline, its glass facade shimmering with golden reflections of the city lights. At its peak, music and laughter drifted down, carried on the ocean breeze. Okechukwu stepped out quickly, his polished shoes clicking against the interlocked pavement. Straightening his crisp white sleeves, he circled the car with the practiced ease of years on duty. He opened the rear door, bowing his head slightly. Adeora emerged like a vision. The emerald gown caught the glow from the chandeliers visible through the glass entrance, turning her into a jewel against the night. The diamond pendant at her neck sparkled with every movement, and her braided bun framed her regal face perfectly. Heads turned instantly. Strangers at the door paused mid-conversation, their eyes trailing after her. "Thank you," she said softly, her voice floating like music before she stepped onto the red-carpeted entrance. Okechukwu gave no reply, simply closing the door behind her. But his eyes lingered, sweeping the crowd around them, alert to anyone watching too closely. Years in the military had sharpened his instincts. Even here, among wealth and champagne, he trusted no one. The rooftop itself was nothing short of dazzling. Floor-to-ceiling glass walls gave sweeping views of Lagos, from the glowing Lekki Ikoyi link bridge to the scattered lights dancing on the water's surface. Inside, crystal chandeliers cascaded like frozen waterfalls, while leather lounge chairs in deep burgundy and gold sat arranged in clusters. A DJ booth pulsed with soft Afrobeat rhythms, the bass vibrating through the polished wooden floor. Adeora glided through the room with the ease of one who belonged. Friends greeted her with excited squeals, hugs, and air kisses. A waiter in a sleek black uniform offered her a glass of champagne on a silver tray, which she accepted gracefully. Okechukwu, however, kept to the background. He stationed himself by the far wall near the exit doors, blending into the shadows. His white sleeves stood out under the dim lights, but his stillness made him invisible to most. From there, he could see everything: the crowded dance floor, the laughing groups on the balcony, the waiters weaving through with trays of drinks, and of course her, always her. From across the room, Adaora's gaze flicked toward him once. It was fleeting, so quick that anyone else might have missed it. But for Okachukwu, that single glance carried weight. An acknowledgement, perhaps even reassurance. Still, he reminded himself of his place. His job was not to dance under chandeliers or sip champagne by her side. His job was to protect, to wait, to watch. And so he did, silently, while the night around them glittered with luxury, never knowing that danger was already circling, just beyond the edges of the party lights. The rooftop party was alive with music and laughter, the city skyline glittering beneath the Lagos night. Guests floated in their gowns and tuxedos, their glasses clinking in endless toasts. Adaora was the star of it all, her emerald dress catching the light like a jewel, her laughter bright as champagne bubbles. But not everyone in the room celebrated her presence. From his corner, Okachukwu felt it first, a prickle along the back of his neck. Years of experience had sharpened his instincts, and they rarely failed him. His eyes, sharp and steady, caught a pair of men lingering too long by the bar. Their clothes were too plain for the elegance of the night, their eyes too focused on Adaora. He had just his cuff, pretending nonchalance, but every fiber in him tightened. Adaora, unaware, leaned across a low velvet sofa to listen to her friend's joke. Her diamonds glinted, her smile effortless. Yet even in the crowd, Okachukwu could see how those men's attention never strayed. Moments later, they moved. He tracked them with careful precision. They weren't guests, he was sure now. They slid through the crowd with the kind of caution only danger carried, their bodies angling closer to Adaora's circle. One whispered something to the other, and Okachukwu caught just enough. A word that froze him where he stood. Virgin. The hairs on his arms bristled. His heart quickened, but his face remained calm. Ritualist. He had heard rumors of wealthy cultists prowling Lagos, hunting unsuspecting women. And now, in this glittering palace of music and wealth, they had fixed their eyes on Adaora Adesoy. She had no idea. Okachukwu left his corner and crossed the room, steady and deliberate. He didn't want to alert the men, nor Adaora. He needed timing sharp, exact. By the time he reached her, the men had drawn closer. Too close. Adaora, he murmured, bending low as though he had a driver's message to pass. She looked up at him, startled, her lips parting. But before she could speak, Okachukwu did the unthinkable. He kissed her. The entire lounge seemed to freeze. Adaora's eyes widened, her glass tilting dangerously in her hand. For a moment, she was too stunned to react. But behind her, the men at the bar stopped dead in their tracks. He saw it, the flicker of irritation in their eyes, then the quiet shift as they turned away. To them, the kiss had changed everything. She was no longer untouched prey. She was no longer useful. Okachukwu pulled back slowly, his dark eyes locking with hers, steady and calm. "Forgive me," he whispered, his voice low enough that only she could hear. "But your life was in danger." Adaora's chest rose and fell, her hand still trembling around her glass. She searched his eyes, torn between outrage and confusion. Around them, whispers stirred. The guests shocked, intrigued, some scandalized. But Okachukwu didn't care about the murmurs or what this moment would cost him. All he cared about was that Adaora was safe. For now. Because as he scanned the crowd again, he saw the two men vanish through a side door. Their retreat wasn't surrender, it was delay. The night wasn't over. The real threat had only just begun. The black Bentley purred softly as it rolled into the Adesoy mansion driveway, headlights slicing through the quiet Banana Island night. The marble columns of the house glowed under recessed floodlights, tall palms standing like sentinels on either side. Adaora hadn't said a word throughout the ride. She sat in the back seat, her emerald gown draped across the leather seats, diamond necklace glinting faintly under the car's interior light. Her hands were clasped tight in her lap, her lips pressed thin. Okechukwu kept his eyes forward, his hands steady on the wheel. But his chest felt heavy, weighed down by the memory of what he had done. His job had been simple: protect her, not touch her. Yet tonight he had crossed a line no driver should ever cross. When the Bentley stopped before the grand entrance, Adaora pushed the door open and stepped out before Okechukwu could reach her side. She didn't wait for his courtesy. Her heels clicked angrily across the marble steps as she entered the house, emerald gown trailing behind her like a river of silk. Okechukwu followed at a respectful distance, head bowed, his white sleeves catching the glow of the chandelier as they entered the grand foyer. Inside, the mansion was a blend of wealth and warmth. Ivory walls, marble floors polished like glass, bronze-framed art pieces, and a spiral staircase wrapped in gold-trimmed railings. The air smelled faintly of lavender from the evening's diffusers. Adaora walked straight into the lounge and dropped into the velvet sofa, her back stiff, her chin lifted, her eyes, sharp and questioning, fixed on him. "Okechukwu," she began, her voice calm but laced with fire. "What happened tonight?" He stood before her, hands clasped in front of him like a soldier awaiting judgment. "Madam," his voice was low, steady, "I did what I had to do to keep you safe." Her eyes narrowed. "By kissing me? In front of everyone?" Silence hung between them. The only sound was the gentle trickle of the fountain in the corner of the lounge. Okechukwu swallowed hard. "They were watching you. I overheard them, madam. They said they needed a virgin for ritual. They were coming for you." That kiss, he paused, his jaw tightening. It was the only way to make them believe otherwise. Adaora froze. The word ritual chilled her. She leaned back against the velvet sofa, her hand instinctively going to her necklace. "You're saying those men would have—" She broke off, shaking her head in disbelief. "Yes," Okechukwu said firmly. "And they will try again. People like that, they do not stop easily." Her breath quickened. She had grown up behind walls of wealth with guards, security systems, and privilege. She had always believed she was untouchable. Tonight had cracked that illusion. She looked up at Okechukwu again, really seeing him. Not just as a driver, but as the man who had risked his job, his honor, and his life to protect her. His broad shoulders filled his white shirt, his stance steady, his eyes unwavering. "You risked everything tonight," she whispered, her voice soft now. He lowered his gaze. "It is my duty, madam. Nothing more." But Adaora's heart fluttered at the lie. Because deep inside, she knew his duty did not demand a kiss. It demanded sacrifice, courage, perhaps even pain. But not the press of lips that still burned against her own. The silence between them grew heavy again. She wanted to scold him for daring, for crossing the line. She wanted to demand why his touch had not felt like violation, but like safety. Instead, she only whispered, "Don't ever do that again." Her words were sharp, but her eyes betrayed her. Soft, uncertain, trembling with a feeling she could not name. Okechukwu bowed his head. "Yes, madam." He turned to leave, but just before he stepped out of the lounge, Adaora's voice stopped him. "Okechukwu." He froze, shoulders tense. "Thank you." It was all she said. But for him, it was enough to know that the line between servant and mistress had been blurred forever. The mansion was quieter than usual that night. The chandeliers had dimmed, the marble floors no longer echoed with footsteps, and the scent of lavender from the evening diffusers lingered faintly in the air. But for Adaora, sleep refused to come. She lay in her king-sized bed, the silk sheets cool against her skin, her emerald gown replaced by a satin nightdress the color of ivory. The room was a masterpiece of modern luxury. Tall windows framed by flowing golden drapes, a chandelier dripping crystals like frozen raindrops, and an abstract Yoruba painting above the bed. Yet none of it brought her peace. Her mind kept circling back to that moment. That kiss. It wasn't supposed to happen. She should have felt insulted, violated even. But instead, she felt safe. The warmth of his hand at her waist, the firmness of his lips against hers. These images replayed again and again, leaving her restless and confused. Adaora turned to her side and stared at the city skyline through her window. Why do I feel this way about my driver? She asked herself, gripping her pillow tightly. This is wrong, isn't it? Across the compound, in the driver's quarters, Okechukwu sat on the edge of his small bed. His room was plain but neat, cream-painted walls, a single wardrobe, a framed photograph of his late father above a prayer shelf. The hum of the ceiling fan filled the silence. His crisp white shirt lay folded on a chair, but he still wore his black trousers, unable to fully relax. He buried his face in his hands. What have I done? He muttered, his voice low and pained. Kissing Adaora was not just crossing a line, it was erasing it. He was her employee, bound to protect her, not touch her. Yet tonight, in that moment of danger, instinct had taken over. He hadn't thought of consequences, only her safety. But the feel of her lips still lingered, haunting him in ways he could not admit. Back in the mansion, Adaora rose from her bed and walked barefoot to her vanity mirror. She touched her lips gently, her reflection staring back at her with wide, questioning eyes. She remembered the murmurs of the party guests, the way they had looked at her after the kiss. But none of that mattered compared to how she herself had felt. A warmth spread in her chest, fear mixed with something sweeter, something she dared not name. Meanwhile, Okechukwu lay back on his narrow bed, staring at the ceiling. His heart was heavy, torn between guilt and a desire he refused to acknowledge. He whispered a quiet prayer for strength, for the courage to keep his distance, for the discipline to remain only what he was, her driver. But deep down, both of them knew the truth. The boundary between them had been broken, and neither sleep nor silence could mend it again. The sun rose softly over Banana Island, painting the mansion in strokes of gold. The household stirred awake, but for Adaora, the night had barely allowed her rest. Her eyes were heavy, though not from sleep, but from the weight of thoughts she could not quiet. She sat at her vanity, brushing her hair slowly. Her satin robe clung loosely to her shoulders, and her mind was far away, circling around one memory. The kiss. The one act that should never have happened, yet had saved her. Her mother had already left for a charity meeting, and the mansion was quiet except for the faint hum of the staff moving about. That quietness made every sound sharper. The creak of the door, the faint shuffle of shoes on the marble floor, the whisper of the morning breeze. By the time Adaora descended the staircase, her steps were light but uncertain. Her eyes wandered automatically to where she knew he would be, and there he was. Okechukwu stood beside the gleaming SUV parked at the front. His white sleeves were crisp and perfectly ironed, his black trousers sharp, his shoes polished until they gleamed. Yet his eyes, though lowered respectfully, betrayed the unrest that lingered within him. "Good morning, Ma," he said, his voice steady but low. Adaora hesitated for a second longer than usual before replying. "Good morning, Okechukwu." Their eyes brushed against each other for a fleeting moment. A glance, nothing more. But in that glance lived the entire memory of last night. Both quickly looked away, retreating into silence. The car door opened, and she stepped inside. He shut it gently, his hands betraying the faintest tremor. When he settled behind the wheel, the interior filled with a tense stillness. The drive through the pristine roads of Banana Island began. The engine purred, the air conditioner whispered cool air, yet the silence between them was louder than any sound. Adaora turned her gaze to the window, watching palm trees sway lazily in the morning breeze. But her reflection on the tinted glass betrayed her. Her lips parted slightly, her eyes too restless. She could still feel the phantom warmth of the kiss on her skin, the way his hands had steadied her shoulders, the urgency of that moment. Okechukwu gripped the wheel firmly, his eyes fixed on the road. His posture was rigid, his jaw set, but his mind rebelled against the discipline. He replayed it all, the decision he had made in desperation, the feel of her lips, and the danger it now posed to both their worlds. Do you usually drive this quietly?" Adaora's voice broke the silence, soft yet steady. His knuckles whitened slightly against the steering wheel. "I Try not to disturb your peace, Ma. The formality of his words stung her more than she expected. She wanted him to say something else, something real, something that acknowledged what had passed between them. But he didn't. Her lips curved in the faintest, wry smile. Peace is a funny word, Okachukwu, especially when it doesn't exist. He risked a glance at her through the rearview mirror. Their eyes met again. For a moment, the world outside disappeared. No Lagos traffic, no tinted glass, no heiress and driver. Just two restless souls locked in a dangerous truth. But he quickly broke away, clearing his throat softly. "We'll be at the foundation office in 10 minutes, Ma." She leaned back against the leather seat, closing her eyes, trying to still the storm inside her. He focused on the road, his heartbeat loud against his chest. The silence returned, heavier than before. Both of them knew nothing would ever be the same again. The tension in the mansion grew like a quiet storm. What happened at the rooftop party? The kiss, the danger, the hurried escape, had left a mark deeper than either Adaora or Okachukwu dared to admit. For days, Adaora moved through the gleaming halls of the Banana Island mansion in silence, her heels clicking against marble floors, her perfume lingering in the air. She wore elegance like armor, silk blouses, flowing skirts, diamond earrings, but beneath her poise, her heart carried an unsettled rhythm. Each time she crossed paths with Okachukwu, her pulse betrayed her. He stood, as always, in his crisp white sleeves and dark trousers, polished shoes clicking lightly on the tiled floors. His posture remained upright, his face a mask of duty, but his eyes, those deep, steady eyes, betrayed a battle within. One evening, the silence finally cracked. Adaora sat in the living room, its gold-accented chandeliers glowing against the marble floor, Afrobeats humming faintly from hidden speakers. She pretended to scroll through her phone, but her gaze kept flicking to the door where she knew he would appear at any moment. And then he did, carrying himself with the quiet respect of a man who knew his place yet could not hide the pull between them. "Okachukwu," her voice came, firmer than she felt. "Yes, madam," he replied, bowing his head slightly. Her chest tightened. She wanted to say, "Don't call me madam." She wanted to remind him of the rooftop, of the kiss that had saved her life, of the fire it had lit. But her lips trembled, caught between pride and longing. She rose from the sofa, emerald satin gown flowing as she crossed to him. The distance between them felt heavier than the marble pillars of the mansion. "You risked yourself for me that night," she said softly, her voice low, almost breaking. "And yet, since then, you've acted as though nothing happened. Do I mean so little to you?" His jaw tightened. He looked at her, really looked at her, his steady eyes burning with a mixture of restraint and unspoken desire. "You mean too much," he whispered. "That's why I keep silent." The words hung in the air, vibrating against the stillness. For a moment, the mansion seemed to hold its breath. Adaora's heart pounded. She had never felt so vulnerable, so alive, so close to something forbidden yet undeniably true. The silence between them was no longer empty. It was full, trembling with a confession neither dared to fully release. And from that night on, the walls of the Adesoy mansion carried not just wealth and beauty, but the echo of two hearts daring to break the rules. The night wrapped itself around Banana Island like velvet, silent but restless. The Adesoy mansion glowed against the darkness, its golden lights spilling across the marble floors and glass walls. For most of Lagos, it was just another quiet evening. For Adaora and Okachukwu, it was the edge of something they could no longer contain. Adaora had tried to sleep. She had changed into a flowing silk nightgown, pale ivory against her dark skin, and retreated to her bedroom. The space was elegant, soft cream drapes swaying from a breeze, a king-sized bed framed with mahogany wood, and a chandelier that cast delicate shadows across the room. Yet despite its beauty, it felt suffocating. Her mind refused peace. Every image returned to Okachukwu, his steady eyes, his words in the living room. "You mean too much." Unable to bear the silence, she stepped out. Her bare feet padded against the polished marble as she descended the spiral staircase. The house was quiet, but she knew where he would be. And she was right. Okachukwu stood near the mansion's side entrance, the faint glow from a recessed wall light outlining his figure. He wore his familiar crisp white shirt, sleeves slightly rolled up, his posture upright but his shoulders heavy with unspoken weight. She paused at the doorway, just watching him. He was a man bound by duty, torn between loyalty and desire, yet every line in his body betrayed the storm he carried. "Okachukwu," she whispered. He turned. The sound of her voice undid him more than he cared to admit. "You should be resting, madam." Her lips tightened. "Stop calling me that." The words slipped out, sharper than she intended, but she didn't take them back. Her eyes glistened as she stepped closer. "I'm not just your employer. I'm not just untouchable. I'm a woman, and that night you kissed me. You saved me, but you also woke something in me." Okachukwu's breath caught. He clenched his fists, his knuckles pale against the shadows. "You don't understand what you're saying. If anyone knew, if your family, your world discovered this." He trailed off, shaking his head. "I would lose everything. And you. And me?" She pressed. "You'd lose your safety, your freedom, your name." His voice broke, low and raw. The silence pulsed again between them, heavier now, burning with unspoken longing. Adaora closed the gap, her emerald eyes locked on his. "But what if I don't care? What if the only thing I want to lose is this distance between us?" For a heartbeat, neither moved. The world shrank to the space between his trembling restraint and her aching courage. Then Okachukwu exhaled a sound that was half prayer, half surrender. He stepped closer, his hand brushing against hers, hesitant but electric. "Adaora." Her name on his lips was a confession, a vow, and a sin all at once. And in that moment, as the mansion lights glowed and the Lagos night hummed faintly beyond the gates, their hearts collided in a truth they could no longer hide. They were already too far gone. The evening was thick with the kind of Lagos heat that pressed against the skin, softened only by the ocean breeze drifting toward Banana Island. The Adesoy mansion glowed against the night, its glass windows reflecting the city lights like jewels scattered in the dark. The black Bentley purred to life in the courtyard. Okachukwu, crisp in his white long-sleeved shirt and dark trousers, stood tall as he opened the door for Adaora. She stepped out in a cream silk blouse and black skirt, her perfume subtle yet commanding. "People are staring," she murmured, catching the whispers of staff and neighbors. "Let them," Okachukwu replied softly. His voice carried steady warmth, but his hand lingered a moment too long as he helped her in. At a rooftop restaurant on Victoria Island, glass walls framed the Lagos skyline. Adaora sat with her business associates, their voices a blur. Her eyes strayed to the corner where Okachukwu stood by the railing, watchful, loyal, yet more than that. When she excused herself and crossed to him, the night air buzzed. "You stand there like a soldier," she teased. His lips curved slightly. "I stand here for you." Her heartbeat tripped. Later, back in her penthouse living room, she kicked off her heels and curled onto the couch, her navy jumpsuit flowing around her legs. The city lights poured in through glass walls. "You make it look easy," she whispered, swirling wine in her glass. "Being strong, always in control." Okachukwu stood near the window, sleeves rolled, eyes steady on her. "It's not easy, especially around you." Her chest tightened. For the first time, she saw not just her driver, but a man who felt the weight of her presence. The glass elevator hummed as it climbed, Lagos spread beneath them like scattered stars. She stood close, her black gown brushing his arm. "You never answer me directly," she said suddenly. "Do you feel what I feel?" His jaw clenched, his hand tightened on the railing. "I feel too much," he admitted. The air between them quivered, charged, until the doors slid open and saved them both. That night, she found him by the rooftop infinity pool. The water glowed sapphire, candles flickering. He had removed his shoes, his crisp sleeves folded, trousers rolled slightly. She approached in a silk robe over her swimsuit, champagne glass in hand. "You hide from me up here?" He shook his head. "I'm hiding from myself." When she sat beside him, their fingers brushed. Neither moved away. Days later, in a grand hotel lobby, their steps echoed on marble. She wore a champagne-colored gown. He walked behind her in perfect discipline. But whispers spread like wildfire. The heiress and her driver. Adora's jaw tightened. She turned sharply to him. "Does it bother you that they talk?" "No," he said firmly. His gaze burned into hers. "Because they don't know the truth." "And what's the truth, Okechukwu?" she asked breathlessly. He stepped closer, low voice trembling. "That I love you." The mansion garden was lit with lanterns, roses perfuming the night. Adora walked barefoot in a white flowing maxi dress. Okechukwu carried his jacket, silent but close. She stopped suddenly, her eyes luminous. "You've risked everything for me. Your job, your name, your peace." "Why?" he exhaled. "Because my heart never asked permission." Her lips parted. She reached for his hand. At last, they stood at her bedroom doorway. The golden handles gleamed, silk curtains swayed, and her satin robe clung to her frame. "Stay," she whispered. Okechukwu's hand gripped the doorframe, torn between duty and desire. But her eyes, vulnerable, pleading, certain, pulled him past hesitation. He stepped inside. The door closed softly behind them. Their lips met, no longer a kiss of protection, but one of surrender. Her hands clutched his shirt, his fingers tangled in her hair, and the air filled with the sound of two hearts that had finally stopped fighting. The night carried them forward, no words needed, only the certainty that love, once disguised as sacrifice, had now claimed them fully.